much fun always to be up here. Manju and Manoli, we love you and we miss you. It was so nice to see your face, Manoli. And so good to see everybody here. So much love, that we all have for each other and that I have for each one of you. And those of you on the live stream, we're so glad that you're with us. It says, I don't want to ever leave this. I can't remember what the word was, but I don't want to leave this time, or I don't want to leave this moment. And the great thing is, we really don't have to, because he's with us all the time. So we really don't need to. We have a phrase that we use, and in certain kinds of relationships, and that phrase is falling in love. And it's kind of an interesting phrase because we like that phrase, falling in love. And when you're falling in love, usually we don't say, I'm taking very slow, measured steps toward love. Or I am being extremely cautious, and I am just taking it one moment at a time just to see, really being self-protective. That's not the feeling of falling in love. When you fall in love, you just pull out all the stops. You're not being self-protective. You really trust what's happening. You trust the relationship. You trust that other person. And you just don't want to have any restrictions on your heart. You just say, I'm in free fall. And I love that feeling. So we're gonna talk about that feeling a little bit today. I want to read a few scriptures. We're going to do a little bit of, we're going to be heavy on the word in the beginning, and then we'll talk a little bit. So the first thing I want to read is from John, chapter 1. And I just want you to listen with your heart. Everything is from the Passion Translation today. In the beginning, the living expression was already there, and the living expression was with God, yet fully God. They were together, face to face, in the very beginning. And through his, the creative expressions, creative inspiration, this living expression made all things. For nothing has existence apart from him. Life came into being because of him, for his life is light for all humanity. And this living expression is the light that bursts through gloom, the light that darkness could not diminish or overcome. He entered into the very world that he created. He was not born by the joining of human parents or from natural means or by a man's desire, but he was born of God. And so the living expression became a man and lived among us, and we gazed upon the splendor of his glory and the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, overflowing with tender mercy and truth. I want to read a couple more here. I'm going to go into Colossians. And in Colossians, I want to read, it's Colossians 1, I think it's about verse 15. Let's see, yeah. It says, "For in him was created the universe of things, both in the heavenly realm and on the earth, all that is seen, all that is unseen, every seat of power, every realm of government, every principality, every authority. It all exists through him and for his purpose. God is satisfied to have all his fullness dwelling in Christ. And by the blood of his cross, everything in heaven and earth is brought back to himself, brought to its original intent, restored to innocence." And then I want to read one more. It says in Colossians 2, around the 9th verse, I think, "For he is the complete fullness of deity, living in human form, and our own completeness is now found in him. We are completely filled with God as Christ's fullness overflows within us. He is the head of every kingdom and every authority in the universe, and we have our union with him." Tyler Johnson is a man of God. Many of you may know who he is. And he wrote a book. It's a series of vignettes. It's a series of encounters with Jesus. And I think it's called Supernatural Stories stories of the supernatural, finding God, encountering God in Walmart and other unlikely places. And he has a chapter in there that took my breath away when I read it. He has a description of his meeting, of an encountering Jesus as his bridegroom. And he said something in there that just grabbed my heart because I know it's true. He described it. It was so amazing and awesome. But he said, if he came to everyone the way he came to me that night, it would violate a person's free will. Because once you see him, your will is gone. You want him more than you've ever wanted anything, and it's the only thing you really, really want. This awesome being who is fierce and dangerous and beautiful and powerful and loving and personal and amazing, he's found a way to come and live inside of you because he wants a relationship with you, but not just any kind of relationship. He wants a relationship that he calls oneness. Now, we say that, when people get married, they're one, and you can kind of feel one with certain people in the sense that you have the same kind of point of view, get the same jokes, and so on. But the oneness that we have in the natural, there's nothing that compares to what he's talking about. He is talking about a fusion. He's talking about coming and living in you so that his life can unfold in us and through us. That's what he's talking about. This risen Christ is talking about he found a way, he made a way. He saw a field and it had a treasure in it, and he bought the whole field. When I met Jesus, which was July 11th, 1983, I've had other encounters since, but that's the one that changed my life forever. All I had to do was meet him briefly, and my whole reality changed. Colors were brighter, alliances were different, my goals were different, everything was different. I had never heard the word born again. I'd never met anybody who'd ever had a personal relationship with God. I only knew two things. The Jesus that I'd kind of heard about from time to time, I didn't grow up in church, was alive, is alive, and he loved me. Those were the two realities that absolutely changed everything. For some reason, he loved me. Last week, Peter talked about the need to feel like you belong. That feeling of belonging drives our well-being. And I was talking to a friend of mine recently, or several young friends, and we were just talking in general, and we were talking about people and, kind of just relationships and stuff. And one of the young ones said, a lot of people just don't feel very understood. They feel like people don't understand them. They just feel, that's kind of an orphan spirit, Nobody really gets me. You know what I'm saying? And I always think about, I'm such a simple person. What's not to get? Good grief. I hardly have any, internal conflicts or anything. I'm a very simple person. But then when I really thought about it, I thought, you know what? The reason I always feel understood, I never feel like anybody doesn't get me. I always say to Steve, I'm the most normal person on the block. You want to know how people think? Ask me. The questions I have, everybody has. I just feel totally normal. And I never feel misunderstood. And I realized later on, probably the reason for that is because I feel so known by him. I feel so known at such a deep level. I was praying about a year ago, and I remember I said to the Lord, why do you love me so much? This does not make sense. Really, just add it up, Sheesh. And before I could even get the thought out, he said, because I know who you are. He knows me better than I know myself. And being known like that is a feeling of belonging. It's that feeling that I'm in somehow. I'm not a stranger, And so I always feel like I'm just really known. I never feel misunderstood by anybody. it may be a delusion in the natural, but it's a helpful narrative, first of all. But in the supernatural, it's completely and totally true, So Jesus talks about union all the time. That's the kind of relationship. That's the kind of relationship that he wants. And so John 15 is just all about union. He talks about union in so many different kinds of ways in John. I'm getting there. John, reveal yourself in the Word. I need to get to John 15. But anyway, he talks about, he says, I will not leave you orphans, because he knows that without him, the world makes us orphans. The world makes us feel like, where do we belong? Where do we fit in? Are we really loved? Are we really understood? I mean, the world kind of makes orphans of people. And he knew that. He knows it. And so he says, I love each of you with the same love that the Father loves me. Do we feel like the Father loves Jesus? We have been invited in to the love fest of the Trinity. We have absolutely been invited into the love fest that is the Trinity, so that we never feel misunderstood. We never feel left out. FOMO is not an issue in the kingdom. It just is not. And he says here, you must continually, he says, you must continually let my love nourish your hearts. You can live in my love. And as I continually live nourished and empowered by his love, my purpose for telling you these things is so that the joy that I experience will fill your hearts with overflowing gladness. He says that his love nourishes us. It feeds us. He says his love empowers us. Do we want more power? Then we need to expand our capacity to receive his love, And then he says, here is eternal truth. This is in John 16. When that time comes, you won't need to ask me for anything, but instead you'll go directly to the Father and ask him for anything you desire, and he'll give it to you because of your relationship with me. If someone came to me and told me that they are really dear, dear friends with my son or my daughter or a very close friend, they just showed up at my door, and they said, and I need this or that, just the fact that they love my children, that's their invitation to come right on in. And whatever I can do for them, I want to do for them. We know that just in the natural. How much more when we love the only Son, the only monogene of the Father. And he says that we can ask for whatever we want. But I hear people say, well, that works for you, but not for me. He answers your prayers, but not mine. He does for you, but not for me. That is a kind of a misunderstanding of what happened on the cross. Because it says that God is no respecter of persons. And this is the thing. It's not a formula. It's not a set of protocols that we need to follow to kind of get what we need or get what we want from the Father, or from the spirit realm. Everything, it says in Ephesians 1:3, I think, it says that every spiritual blessing has already been lavished on us. Not even stingily, or not even given like on a need-to-have basis. He has lavished it on us already. But the key to answered prayer is oneness. That is the key. Because everything, all of our spiritual blessings, all of our spiritual riches, I think it says in Colossians, are in him. So we have to be in him to be able to access those spiritual blessings. When I was growing up, a lot of you who know me know that my mom was a she was an alcoholic, and she was a very, very tormented person. Sometimes she was dangerous. She was always dangerous emotionally. Sometimes she was dangerous physically. And my brother and I learned to manage her. We learned to say, not to say certain things that would trigger her. We learned to kind of say and do the things that would keep us emotionally or physically safe. So we managed her. But that wasn't a real relationship. And I think when people are into kind of a separation mentality, into legalistic mindsets, that's just another way of managing God. I'm going to wear long skirts, not watch certain movies, read 5 chapters a day, and make sure I tithe because subconsciously I really think he's a hard taskmaster, and I need to manage him. I need to get what he has. And so we manage him. That's not the kind of relationship he's talking about. All the promises, all the riches, all the wonders of the kingdom, revelations in the Word, they're all accessed through oneness because they're all accessed in him and through him. And he's made a way. It's so awesome and amazing. I mean, I read those scriptures and I think, seriously? For me? But that's the way it is. And so, it's not a set of protocols. It's not something we need to just do. It's something we need to be willing to receive. I do never measure his love. I mean, we can't measure his love by circumstances because the enemy will just play in that all the time. I had a kind of a hard week this week because Patricia and I and another friend were praying almost all week for some specific people to be rescued from Afghanistan. And in the end, they weren't yet. I don't know what will happen in the future because prayers are never wasted. They're never ignored, and we were praying with love and believing and trust. But I was up till 4 or 5 because it's the time is different there. I'm in real time hearing they're running to this gate and that gate. I mean, it was pretty intense. And in the end, the airport closed and other things happened and the explosions, and we couldn't get them out yet. But you see, circumstances between me and Jesus, nothing's at stake. Because the circumstance that has changed my life, the circumstance that is the ultimate primary, the way I know he loves me is not because he answers this prayer or that prayer. Icing on the cake. I mean, look, I'm a normal person. I like my circumstances worked out. I'm security oriented. I like things the way I like them, But there's nothing at stake in the relationship ever, because the cross is the message that I receive. Does he love me? Yeah, more than I could ever possibly even imagine, more than anyone could imagine. I mean, the words that I read are just shadows of who he really is. And his presence, being in his presence is all the reward. I mean, that's way more than I ever dreamed I would ever have. And that's way, way more than enough. And yeah, of course he works out of circumstances. There are lots of promises. I can go to the Father and ask for anything I want. And lots of times, I feel like, wow, it just falls out of heaven. I ask for 1, he gives me 3. I mean, it's just, he's a God of incredible abundance. It's just amazing, So our cerebral cleverness, our brightness, our assessments and our clever ways of putting things and parsing things and our critical eye and all that, that may give us power in the world. It's not very useful in the kingdom, because we forget sometimes, because we really do have, we're a pretty sophisticated bunch here, okay? I mean, I look around and I see people who are just shining with brilliance. I mean, just natural brilliance. I mean, you're all so amazing. But what I forget sometimes, I think, that we are asked to come as a child. We are asked to come with childlike faith. And, I think that we sometimes forget that. And so when I first met Jesus, like I say, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what had happened except that, Jesus is alive and he loves me. Like, wow. That was, if I never knew anything else in the rest of my life, that was enough. That was just amazing. But, I was at a time in my life where my husband, not this beautiful angel, but another one, did not love me. Children were young. Children love you. They have a lot of needs. They're pretty relentless in their love. And and so I just thought, and my mother never loved me. My dad really loved me, but he had just married a new person, and he was very, tied up with that. And I just thought, I just really need somebody to love me. I really do. I didn't know much about Christianity or much about Jesus, and I didn't know anything about the Word. But I did know that I kept hearing this thing has a lot to do with love. And supposedly, it's about him loving me, So I thought, okay, so that's the thing I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on just like recognizing and believing and that he loves me. So for about 6 months, or maybe it was 3 months, I don't know, it was a long time. Almost every day, I would just imagine myself sitting on the lap of Jesus. And I would just say to him, just tell me again, I want to hear it. And he would say, I love you, Deborah. And it would just penetrate, it would just penetrate. And then the enemy would say, yeah, that's your mind, that's your own mind, I'm sure that's just what you want to hear. But then I would say, you know what, if my mind agrees with the God of heaven and the Word of God, I rejoice in that, and you're not going to take that from me. So I went every single day, and I would just spend a few minutes like that. And he never once said, you know what? I said, I told you yesterday, the day before, and 3 weeks ago. When are you going to get it? He never did, because he never gets tired of being who he is. And he is love. He is personal, designer love. His love was designed for me. His love is designed for you. He speaks to you the way you speak to yourself. He knows your slang. He gets your jokes, because his mind is so vast, it contains all of our minds and all the minds that have ever been manifested on the earth, and all the minds of all the angels, and all the minds of the seraphs, and the minds of the trees, and the minds of everything in his creation. His vast mind contains that, and so much more than I could even possibly even think of trying to name. So I was falling in love. I fell in love the first moment. He had me at looking at me, And so I did that, and he just kept pushing it further and further and further down, so that I just believed and believed and believed and believed that he really, really loved me. Love is the realm. Love is a realm of its own. Love is an authority of its own. The kind of love that comes from the cross, the kind of love that comes from heaven, the kind of love that comes from the risen Christ, we really don't have anything like it here. We have approximations. There are people who give their lives for others, of course. We've seen it over and over. There are people who really kind of shine, people who are loving. But I'll tell you what, when someone's shining with his love, it is a whole different level. It is completely different. There are no judgments in it. There are no assessments coming up short. He sees us as it says in Isaiah 49, I think, he sees us with our walls up. He sees us restored. He sees us the way he created us to be from the very beginning. He sees us in our full restoration, and he speaks to that. When I met Jesus, I was not exactly a likely candidate. I was working as a belly dancer in, Arab supper clubs and nightclubs in Denver. So I wasn't exactly like someone he would pick for his team, But he did. He picked me anyway. He says in Colossians, he says, you have not chosen me, I have chosen you. He says that twice in one chapter. Remember when you were a kid and people would choose up teams and you weren't chosen till you were never really chosen. It's just that you were the last one, so you had to go on that team because it was their turn to choose. Never really felt that great, right? He wants us to make sure that we know that we are choosing him because he chose us first. He chose me before I even thought about him. He chose me before I knew about him, before I could even, when my life was really contradicting, his love, his holiness, and everything. He chose me so that I could choose him and keep choosing him and keep choosing him, So I want to submit to us today that making it work, as people say, getting it to work for you, getting prayers answered, accessing the riches of heaven, it all has to do, it comes through oneness. I hear people speak in a separation mentality all the time. I thought I'd be married by now. I thought my daughter would live. I thought I wouldn't lose the house. I thought I would get the promotion. I thought they would be rescued supernaturally, But that is when I speak like that in a way that kind of sounds like I'm disappointed in God, which, by the way, I am not, that's a separation mentality. And the separation mentality it's not the access that he has invited us into. He has invited us into something so awesome and so amazing. It's oneness with him. And in that oneness, that's where the wonders are. That's where the promises are all yes and amen. That's where the riches are. That's where the joy is. That's where the bliss is. Absolute bliss, Trying to please him, in all honesty, doing things to try to please him, it's going to actually lead eventually to some kind of, that's a separation mentality. I mean, it's no more I and he, it's we. That's kind of the mindset that we want to nurture in ourselves. I think, was it you, Peter, that said, I just had this thought the other day that all of our thoughts are either reinforcing oneness or they're deconstructing oneness. Did you say that? It sounds so much like you. Yeah. In other words, when you have a thought, we want to bring every thought captive to Christ. When you have a thought about God, just kind of let's become more conscious. Let's just become more aware. Is that a thought that reinforces my oneness, or is that a thought that actually deconstructs it so that there's more separation in my heart? You know what I'm saying? We need to be careful, kind of, about what the thoughts we entertain, I mean, it's one thing to have a thought fleetingly come, but if you're going to host it, if it's going to be a pattern, those patterns determine, basically, whether or not we are moving into oneness or we're moving away from oneness, And so, basically, religion, those are kind of attempts to manage him, to make sure I do the right things. And some of that could be subconscious, because I'm not saying there's no love of him in it. I'm not saying there's no genuine, I want to please him too. But you know what the good news is? In Matthew 11:28, in the Passion, he says, "Come to me, all you who labor and have heavy burdens, and I will give you rest for your souls. I will be your oasis. Learn of me, because I am humble of heart and easy to please." Do we really believe that he's easy to please? If we've had a critical parent who can never be pleased, if we've had other people in our lives, could be a boss, could be anything, but especially in our formative years, we have parents that are hard to please, who are not the softest place to fall, then we need to reprogram our minds. We need to renew our minds to the truth and the reality of who he really is. Because he says, I'm easy to please, guys. I'm not looking at all your no's. I'm looking at the one yes that I can empower. We'll run with that, and then we'll build on that, and we'll see what happens. In Hebrews 11, we call it the Hall of Faith. There's a lot of people listed in there. They did some pretty crazy, not very godly, pretty unholy, off-the-mark kinds of things. So why are they in the Hall of Faith? Because those things didn't make it into their book of life. their yeses made it in. And the other thing just falls away. That's dross. He's not looking at the dross. He's drawing out the gold. And so all of our answers to prayer, which are really most of the time, a lot of time it's desires of our heart, they all come in oneness, you know. All our answers to prayer, the riches, the healings, everything, it manifests. It manifests from the spiritual kingdom into our lives because we live supernatural lives. We are not limited to the natural. The problem with separation mentality is that, if you're really bright and with it and together and all that, hey, the world rewards that. There's no question. And you can get a lot of results. You can get a lot of what you want. You can get a lot of, earthly power. You can get a lot of identity. You can get a lot of that. But you know what? You always have to chase it. You always have to run after it because it's always running down. There's never enough of that, And that's what mammon is all about. That's what the world teaches us, that there's a pie of finite resources. And if somebody has a big slice, then you have to have a little slice. There's no pie in the heaven. There's nothing circumscribed. It says the riches are unlimited. His riches in glory. And you know what? If they run out, they'll just make more. I mean, it's just the resources are just completely unlimited. But we access the riches of our inheritance. We access the awesome blessings of the kingdom. They're for every single person. They've been won for everybody. I don't have to win any for myself. I don't have to earn any by being just a perfect kind of person. What I need to do is enlarge my capacity to believe and my capacity to receive his love. I just need to enlarge that. And in that, everything comes because I can come as a child. I had an amazing dad, and I knew that I could ask him literally for anything, and if it was in his power, he would get it for me. The actual truth is, because I knew this so completely, I really didn't ask my dad for that much because I knew, anything I wanted. He wouldn't even, there was never a time when he would say, well, you know what? We'll just see about that. That just wasn't his mentality. It was like, okay, fine, that's what you want. I'm going to try to get that for you. He wasn't an unlimited person, so he couldn't get me everything, but whatever he could. And so, but the thing is, the more we fall in love, the more I don't let myself be restricted, the more I don't put guards on my heart, the more I'm willing to pull out all the stops, take all the guards off my heart, open all the windows of my heart, all the doors that I've closed, because the things inside hurt. The more I'm willing to do that and open up to him and trust him that he is the softest place to fall, the very softest place to fall. I had a dream about him one time where I saw him feeling fierce and terrible and frightening and scary and tall. And I said to him, wow, you are beautiful, but you are so scary looking, Lord. And he said, oh, that's how I look to my enemies. To you, I come as a lamb. That's the whole thing. The risen Christ, we are married to the risen Christ. We really don't know how amazing he is, how incredibly awesome, dangerous, beautiful, fearsome, because he comes to us as a bridegroom who says in Song of Solomon, chapter 4, if you can imagine this awesome being that I just heard trying to be described by some of the people who saw him, some of the people who knew him. That awesome being says to you, one glance from your worshiping eyes, and I am undone. You ravish my heart. He makes himself vulnerable to our love. He makes himself vulnerable to our worshiping love. That is so crazy. It's just hard to process. So when I read these passages in the Word, I just get so high. And I just wow, sometimes when I'm preparing for this, I get so high, I'm either I need to eat something or I need to do something so I can just keep concentrating because they don't want me to just stand up there and just be high, There would be a certain modeling involved in that. But I'm also trying to reach your mind as well as your heart, So I want to talk a little bit about if we want to fall in love with him, which in all honesty, it is the easiest way to go. It is just the easiest, you know? I was talking to a dear friend of mine the other day who I absolutely love, and she's a super strong Christian and gets prayers answered. I mean, she's great. She's wonderful. And she's a real, sister of mine. We were just talking a little bit about the Lord, and I was just waxing, blissing. And I said, I just think about him constantly, all the time. I mean, I wake up, thank God, like you chose me. You're so amazing. Thank you so much for choosing me. I think you're so amazing. I'm so in love with you. I go to sleep with that all day long. I'm just kind of consumed with that secret. You know how it is when you're in love? You have that, it's like you have a secret that kind of lights you up inside. There's like a constant flutter, like you're just there's this kind of warmth that you always have. Like just makes you feel like there's something special about my life. There's something special that I'm carrying with me. That's how I feel about him all the time. And I just said, that's how it is, like all day, every day, pretty much. And she said, it's not like that for me, I think it's not like that for a lot of wonderful, beautiful people who actually know him. But it can be like that for anybody. It can be like that for all of us. I have an extremely dear friend that I love very much, and she had a kind of a hard time talking love talk to Jesus. She's not a person who just talks love talk naturally all the time. And we were talking about this one time, some time ago, and she has a dog she really loves, an awesome, beautiful dog, wonderful dog. And I said, do you talk love talk to her? Yeah. I said, well, practice on her, and then get in the spirit and just, transfer. And so, we have to sort of start somewhere. And if we have not been persuaded when we were young that we were beautiful and precious and loved, we may have to do a little bit of persuading of ourselves that we can open up to him and that he loves us more than we could ever imagine. We can go to him and we can cautiously, if we want to, we can just talk some love talk to Jesus, let him talk love talk to you. That's what I did when I got on his lap. I just said, just talk love talk to me. Just like, make me believe that you love me. Like just tell me. His voice is so empowering. His voice changes your life. He just kept pushing it down. I just kept going back for more, for more, for more. Kind of like the thrill is never gone. Like, keep telling me, And so, you know why we love dogs so much? Because they give us a hero's welcome every time. They're just so shameless. You're wonderful. You're amazing. I love you. You're the best. I've been gone for 5 minutes, and that's how you receive me again, every single time. Jesus is way beyond that, way beyond. But we have to use sort of earthly kinds of analogies to kind of convey a little something about what it's like to be in the presence of the Lord of the universe who loves you literally more than we can imagine. And for reasons I can't imagine, But he says he really knows me. So Colossians 2:3 says that our spiritual wealth is in him, that the limited resources of heaven are all in him. But we can't access them apart from him. How could we? He's the way, the truth, and the life. So when I say things like, I don't know where God is, or I really thought it works for you but not for me, or, I'm glad you feel like he loves you, or, I've been praying for such and such for a really long time. We need to be careful that we're not driving ourselves into a separation mentality, because that is a really dead-end track. That will keep us limited to the resources of the world, the crude resources, limited resources of the world, as Paul says. So, some of it is desire, some of it is discipline, and a lot of it's delight. But there is a certain discipline. It says, bring every thought captive to Christ. That is not a really easy. Think how many thoughts you have in a day. Good grief. My heavens, my lasso would just get worn out. But it's easier to bring thoughts captive to Christ if we are filling our hearts and our minds with how much we love him and how grateful we are in him and to him. When Jesus talks, he says, the Father and I are one. But when you can hear him talk, he loves the Father in a oneness, but also in a gratitude kind of way. I mean, he is grateful to the Father. You know, his oneness with the Father does not exclude gratitude. And gratitude is the oneness attitude. It really is. And I'm just so grateful for the fact that he loves me, the things he does for me, for what he's promised me. He's given me his whole inheritance, shares his glory with me. I mean, I just have to enlarge my capacity to actually receive all that. I don't know about you. I mean, I feel like it's a journey to just really believe it and keep believing and keep believing and keep believing and just keep enlarging how, my capacity, to receive his love. So we want to become kind of aware of our thoughts. We don't want to beat ourselves up. Oh no, another separation, mindset. I mean, that doesn't do us any good. Our conscience in the new covenant is not a taskmaster. Our conscience is a friend. Our conscience is a life coach. And so our conscience in the new covenant is blood washed. And so our conscience goes, Deborah, think about what you just said. Do you really want to go down that path? No, I really don't. Thank you. Thank you. The Holy Spirit. Separation, fracturing, assessments, comparing things, ranking us, ranking how good he is to me compared to how good he is to someone else. He's no respecter of persons. He's given each one of us, he shares his entire inheritance. We don't have to earn it. It's not something we get for good behavior. I've even heard, so we just need to keep working into believing that so that I can come as a child and say, this is what I really need, this is what I want, It helps to go into stillness. It helps to slow down our breath, slow down our brain waves, because as we slow down our brain waves, we naturally slow down our thoughts. Thoughts can be such saboteurs, good grief. We want our internal landscape to become more and more of a joy, more and more of a rehearsal of the love affair that we have with him. You know how when you're in love, you think about that person a lot. You think about how they look, the way they smiled at you the last time, the sound of their voice. That's what we want to think about all the time with Jesus. We want to be in such a love affair with him that we're just constantly thinking about the things he said to us in his word, in our hearts, and we want to rehearse those things. Substitution is really one of the easiest ways to change our thought patterns. Put other thoughts in there so that the old patterns can't really squeeze in as easily. We're getting it. There's less and less room. There's less and less room for them to get in. So that separation mentality is also kind of that unbelonging feeling. I'm disappointed. He didn't do it for me. Like, where is God? Kind of thing. Where he is interceding for you, interceding for me at the right hand of the Father, and he's also right here, letting his love. I said, Father, you say in your word that your love will cascade into my heart so that your life can unfold within me. Those are the kinds of thoughts we just really want to have, and we want to keep agreeing with it. We want to learn to talk love talk. If that's not easy for you, just practice in front of a mirror and then just go into prayer and just learn to talk love talk. Because that's how he talks to us. If I want to learn, I was talking to someone, this is way years ago, and I was talking about love talk. And he said, well, that's just not me, I'm just not like that. I said, well, of course not. That's not you, and apart from him, I understand that. That's not you in your, unrestored state, of course. That's not you in one with him. But I said, how does he talk to you? He's not communication stingy. You know what I mean? He doesn't hold back. He doesn't just parse. He just lavishes his love on us. He lavishes his words on us, his affirmation and so on. It's in his word. And this word it's encrypted with the life of Jesus. It never gets old. I read it. I've read it how many thousands of times? But when I read it, thinking about this is the one who is so in love with me that he sold all that he had and bought the whole field because he saw a treasure in me. So when he bought the whole field, he bought a very worldly belly dancer who didn't know she was so ready to fall in love. I didn't know that. He knew it. He knew it. He bought the whole field, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then he is refining and bringing out the treasure, you know. All right. So when we have that sense of belonging, that sense of, you know, there's been so much love lavished on me, and I am fully known. I'm really known. He gets me. He gets my jokes. He knows the kind of slang that I like. He knows the way to talk to me that's going to really grab my heart. You know, he knows how to love me, you know. How many people have thought, I just want to meet somebody who really knows how to love me, how to make me feel really loved. He has it. He really has it. And we can go after him. We always have a choice. He has dignified and honored us with choice. Every thought we have is a choice that we make, you know. He wants us so much to be one with him, to trust him, to love him, to let him take care of us. One time I was in a time in my life that was just really uncertain. There was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of sort of anxiety and this and that about a lot of things. And he just said, Deborah, let me take care of you. Like, I obviously wasn't doing a very good job because it sure wasn't giving me any peace what I was doing. He said, just let me take care of you, Deborah. I will take care of you, you know. So that's when you fall into his arms. You don't take little measured baby steps that are very self-protective. You just fall into his love. You just fall in love. Psalm 16, verse 11 says that in God's presence there is joy forevermore. The Passion Translation says bliss. We're constructed for bliss. We are constructed for it. If you are not euphoric sometimes, if you're not blissful sometimes, it just means in large capacity to receive his presence. That's all. Because it says that in God's presence, we will have bliss. And when we're in his presence, we're in God's presence, of course. So the more we can get ourselves into his presence, turn off the phone, slow down our brain waves, slow down our breathing, start focusing on him, and then just kind of get real quiet, kind of go into a stillness. When I get into real stillness, some people call it the void. I don't like to call it that because it sounds like it's really empty, whereas really that stillness, that sort of emptiness that the Spirit hovers over, it's really the place where everything is in potential. Everything, all the potential is in there. So I just call it stillness. But when I really am able to just, you know, slow down my thoughts, let everything go, focus on my exhales until then I'm not focused on anything at all. In the absence of any attention to things in the natural, and the absence of anxiety, in the absence of measuring and weighing and deciding and branding and all that, in the absence of all that, there's just pure bliss. There's just pure joy. I mean, it just bubbles up. It's almost, in the absence of the things that constrain us in our fallen world and the touch, see, feel world that is not yet fully restored all things to him, but that's the trajectory of history. So, you know, if we read the news, we don't need to get triggered because the trajectory of history is the restoration of all things. In him, to him, for him, and through him. That's where we're headed. It may look like a jagged path, but that's where we're headed. But when I just release the things of the world and just slow down and get still in him, with him, bliss is the natural state. It really is. And so that's so amazing. Like he didn't just make us to just survive and just kind of get along and, he made us for joy. He really did. Things are happening in the world that can break your heart in the natural, but the mood of heaven has not changed. It is joy. It's still joy because he knows the end from the beginning. And when we can be confident in that and confident in him and who he is, the joy just comes. The joy just comes. Oneness opens the realm. That's just the key. Oneness opens the realm. And in Galatians 2:20, in the Passion, and also in several other translations, it says that I no longer live, but the one who lives, I now live in the faith of the one who loved me and gave his life for me. He has made it. He's so amazing and awesome that I don't even have to rustle up my own faith. I can just access by his faith. When I was dancing in clubs, it wasn't my faith that brought me to him. It was his faith. His faith from before the foundation of the world. His faith that I could be someone who could stand here and say, I am so in love. I'm just practically blissed out half the time. I mean, I'm just in kind of a euphoria of just being in love and being loved. People say, I love God, I'll do anything for God, I'll go to the farthest ends of the earth, give 90% of my income, I'll do anything for God because I love God. And that's great. But in all honesty, our ability, our capacity to love him is directly related to our capacity to receive his love. Because he says, you love me because I loved you first. So I need to let him love me first, then I love him more. Then I let him love me more, then I love him more. That's kind of how it goes. And the vast mind of Christ is way beyond anything. Everything in the universe is contained in it. The good, the bad, the ugly, the things that are restored, the things that are being restored, everything is in it. But even so, he has made himself so personal for you, so personal for me, that he says in Song of Solomon, chapter 4, you are my private garden that no one else can have. Now that's pretty intense. I want you for me. I want you just personally, if you were the only one. In fact, you are the only one. You're the only one. My eyes are on you. And what I see, I am so in love with. It's easy to fall in love with people who are in love with you. Have you noticed that? As Christians, we are called, as in the Melchizedek priesthood, we're called to love those who are unlovable and who don't love us. But let's just be normal. It's easier to fall in love with someone who loves you. He is so in love with you. And I just want to invite all of us to kind of watch our thoughts to see, is the pattern of this thought train, is the pattern of this internal chat, my internal thread, is that bringing me into oneness, or is it actually driving me back into a separation mentality? Because if I'm disappointed, I'm angry, I'm bitter, I'm wondering where he is and all that, I'm not saying someone can never have those feelings. What I'm saying is we need to recognize that they're a trick of the enemy to make us to take us away from oneness. And in the end, it'll cause us to judge him, to arraign him. And that does not give us access to everything he's invited us into. We want to enlarge our capacity to receive his love and his goodness. And so just want to invite us all in the coming weeks, to just kind of be a little more conscious of our thoughts, so that if we have a thought especially that makes us feel less, diminishes faith, causes us to question his goodness, an expression of anything other than this guy is so awesome. You're so amazing. I'm so in love with you. Let's just be conscious of it. And because it doesn't reflect truth. It doesn't reflect reality. It doesn't reflect who he is. And it isn't the path that he's opened for us into the wonders that he won for us, paying the highest price for anything that anyone has paid for anything in the history of the cosmos, your heart. Thank you so much. God bless you. Have an awesome week.